Hi, this is KuKy. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to be sharing with you the next step in my rental apartment renovation, which is the hallway. In this video, I'm going to show you how I spent 35 bucks on transforming my hallway in my rental apartment. How did it come to be 35 bucks? Well, I thought how much money I had left, and given that the hallway is the smallest part of my apartment and I'm on a very low budget, I thought that would be a good number to get started with. The problem with the hallway is that there's no light. There's also no place to put your keys or your bag when you come in. So everything was in a corner. I couldn't find my keys when I wanted to go out. The most annoying thing being obviously not having a light, so that was quite tedious. I decided to spend 35 bucks on these issues and make it look a little bit nicer. If you haven't already seen my previous videos, I encourage you to do so. I already posted my bathroom renovation as well as my living room renovation. So if you would like to check that out, I'm going to post some links right below. And without further ado, let me take you on the journey of how my hallway renovation started and the whole thought process that went into it. In order to put today's project into perspective, we are entering through the entrance door and take a right, and we are focusing on this hallway right over here. If we look back towards the entrance door, this is what it looks like. And if we look in the other direction, which is towards the kitchen, this is what we'd be looking at before the transformation. To the left, you can see the area where I'd like to have something to put my keys on. And on the right, you can see a temporary shelf that I got. It's much too wide and too short for the space, so that's definitely an issue that should be addressed. Besides making the hallway more functional, as in adding on lights as well as adding some storage space, I really wanted it to look nicer, and my first step in doing that was to ensure that the walls looked much better. You might not see it on the pictures, but the walls already started to fall apart, so whenever you touch them, part of it falls on the ground, and that made it very tricky to find a solution. Initially, I wanted to paint them, but that's impossible because of the structure of the wall. Whenever you put in some fresh paint, part of the wall will fall on the ground, making that an impossible task. I ended up choosing tile Backsplash, which fits exactly into the theme that I wanted to have in my apartment. It's also very low budget. I didn't have to spend much money purchasing the stickers, and it's so easy to put them on. Let me show you how I did that. First, I had to measure everything out, so just make sure you're aware how high you want the backsplash to be on the wall. Then you use your scissors to cut the appropriate pieces, and finally it's time to put them on the wall. Now, I figured out there are two ways of putting these on the wall. Either if there is a window on the wall where you're trying to put on the backsplash, I would suggest you start from the window and go down. In my case, there's no window, so I encourage you to do it the other way around, from the bottom up. If you're doing this for the first time, it makes sense to start in a corner so that in case you do mess it up, it isn't as obvious. What is great about this material is that it's very easy to work with, so that you can easily cut out bits and pieces and make them a perfect fit. Another thing worth mentioning is that it pays off not to get the cheapest of these backsplash tiles. The reason being that the very cheap ones only enable you to put them on the wall once, and in case you messed it up, you're sort of out of luck because they're very tough to get off the walls. However, if you get the more expensive ones, you can take them off and put them back on again. It's not as big of an issue to sort of twiggle around a bit. Especially if this is the first time that you're working with backsplash tiles, I definitely encourage you not to get the cheapest ones that you can find online just to save yourself the hassle. Make sure to work slowly from one side to the other. If you chose the bottom-up approach, make sure to stick to that approach throughout the project. And most importantly, make sure that there is no gap between two pieces of backsplash tile. Once everything is put tightly together, it always pays off to go over it once more and just make sure that everything sticks onto the wall. We just saw what I did to the right part of the hallway when you enter, so that was the right bottom part. If we look at the left side, I decided to make something different and add some shelves. I used short shelves in that in-between area between the entrance and the bathroom door. That's where I'll be putting my keys. And next to the bathroom door, I decided to use some longer shelves that I can use for some storage space. This is what I was just referencing, so to the left I wanted to have something to put on my keys, and to the right another alternative to that ridiculous storage shelf. I measured out the space and had these 4 shelves made for my space so that they're a perfect fit. Also, with regard to how far they stick out, I made sure that it wasn't too much so I can still walk through the hallway without any problems. And then I used these L-hooks to mount them onto the wall. It was very easy and it didn't cost much at all. So exciting! My custom-made shelves have arrived. Time to get them out and get them ready to be put on the wall. I mentioned this in previous videos. In case that you're living in a rental apartment like I do, It always makes sense before putting holes into the walls to check in with your landlord and let him know what you're planning to do. In my experience, if you're adding on value to his apartment, the landlord often doesn't have a problem with you adding some shelves. For instance, these shelves, I'm not planning on taking them off when I leave, so it will look much nicer for whoever comes in as a next tenant once I'm moving out. I used my drill to put in some little holes before putting in the screws. That made it much easier for me to work with. And I used L-hooks just because they were the cheapest option I could find to mount my shelves onto the wall. With the small shelves mounted successfully to the wall, it was now time to proceed to the larger shelves. I have to apologize for the low quality of this video. As you can tell, there are no windows in this part of the apartment, so regardless of what time of the day I was going to put on these shelves, it was just not going to be bright enough for you to see clearly. I'm sorry. As you can see, I didn't use that many tools. You need a drill, a screwdriver, and a hammer, and you're all good to go. Now, this is what the L-hook looks like from below. Note that the shelves are so low that you can't really see it from this perspective. If you were to mount the shelves a bit higher, I would encourage you to find wooden L-hooks so that it looks a bit nicer. Now have a quick look at the result. With part of the wall issues out of the way, my next big task was the light. As you can imagine, it's horrible if you get back home at night and there's no light in the hallway. You don't know where you're walking to, you take off your shoes and you don't even know where you put them. It's just a nightmare. I don't know what the landlord was thinking when he was planning out his apartment, but definitely not much. Because the landlord didn't calculate in the possibility of having a light mounted in the hallway later on, the only way for me to mount a light was by using a light with a cord and mounting it externally, which is what I did. It doesn't look perfect and you can see the cord, which is obviously not the best, but what can you do? I had no other option, and since I was looking for a very minor transformation and wasn't going to spend much money on it, this is the best I could do, and it definitely brought me some light and saved the issue of coming back home at night and not knowing where to put my things. If it's the first time that you're installing a lamp, fear not, it's not as bad as it looks. Most of the lamps come with an instruction sheet, and if you just keep to the instructions, it is really not that difficult to install. Again, I had to put 2 holes into the wall, and as you can see, this video shows quite clearly the problems with the wall, how pieces start to chip off. I got this lamp secondhand. Apparently someone bought it and didn't really have a space to mount it, so although it's secondhand, it's completely new, and I thought that the design worked quite well with the mirror, as well as the frames that I had already mounted. I just followed the instruction sheet bit by bit. Then I had to mount this little base and in the end just put the lamp on top of it. This was a very easy installation. Really nothing to be worried about if this is your first time. Make sure everything fits tightly. Otherwise, when you put on that globe, it is quite heavy, so it makes sense to make sure that it doesn't fall off, especially if you're dealing with a tedious wall like I am. And that concludes the light installation. Finally, I have light in the hallway. Yay! Now have a quick look at what we have achieved so far. To the left, we've got all the shelves, and to the right, we've got the backsplash that we've just installed. And not to forget, everything is nicely lit. Hope you like it! Having mounted the light, the problems with the wall only became more apparent. So for the bottom part, we have already found a solution. On the right side, we got the backsplash. On the left side, the shelves. So that will be sort of hidden and you can't see what the walls look like. But for the top parts of both walls, it was still very obvious that something is wrong with the walls. For the right side, I decided to mount some picture frames. If you are like me, you have a lot of pictures, drawings, and so on that you got over the years and you never really used. So that was a perfect opportunity for me to just get frames and use 3 pictures that a friend gave to me way back and that were always sort of stored away in a corner. So I gave them a new life, and at the same time it covered the wall problems perfectly. On the left side, I got this really nice huge mirror, which I got secondhand. By coincidence, it is exactly the size that I needed for this piece of wall. So it covers most of it and I don't have to see the imperfections of the wall anymore. If you're ever in the same situation and have to cover a piece of wall, I do encourage you to just go through your pictures, find out the different sizes, get some cheap frames and mount them on the wall. It will do the trick. My frames have arrived, so exciting. As I said, I got them very cheaply. The front part is out of plastic and the frame is out of imitated wood. This didn't cost much at all, and it's a very good option if you're trying to make some use of postcards, pictures, or drawings that you might have lying around like I do. I always prefer doing these things on the floor just because it's flat and you have a lot of space to work with. Overall, very easy. If your frame is much larger than the picture you're trying to put in, I'd suggest that you use some colored paper that you can easily get online. In my case, it was a perfect fit, so I didn't have to do much. Now, once again, it is time for me to put some holes into the wall. I know when you listen to that and you know it's a rental, you might be thinking, why is she doing all that? Well, there's two reasons. First of all, my landlord knows about it. And secondly, since I do have the tools, it doesn't make much of a difference to me. And it's much faster to do it this way than to use some more expensive options such as stickers and so on. That definitely do exist, but they're just more expensive. And since I already have the tools, why not use the tools? To prevent all the dust from falling onto the ground, I put on this piece of paper. I do encourage you to do the same. It makes a lot of sense when you're drilling holes into the walls and don't want to hoover the whole place right after that. The first frame is on the wall, and now I repeated the same process for the second and third frames until they were all hanging in one line. Now you might have noticed that there's another piece of wall right next to the entrance door. I decided to get a huge mirror to put right on top of that in order to cover it, and also because it's nice to have a mirror to look into just before heading out. Just because this mirror is rather huge, I would definitely encourage you to use screws and put some holes into the wall. Otherwise, I would just be a bit concerned about the weight of the mirror itself. But completely up to you. There are a lot of options in case that your rental apartment doesn't allow for you to put holes into the wall. Last step is to lift the mirror and put it onto the hooks, and your mirror is ready to be used. Really exciting how this hallway is coming together, isn't it? The last step in my transformation was the door. Have a quick look at what it looked like before. Can you believe it? It looked so disgusting. Seriously, I didn't even want to touch it. Part of the problem was to make it look nicer, but on the other hand, the most important issue to address was the wind that would come through the gaps. You would see that if you hold a piece of paper right underneath the gaps, that especially in autumn and winter, quite a lot of wind comes through the gaps and makes the space very cold. I can literally feel the cold looking at this video. I put a piece of paper right underneath the door gap. The paper is moving around vividly, just showing you how much wind is coming through. To me, it is still a complete mystery how whoever lived here before was able to live here without having a problem with the wind blowing through the gaps. It's a huge issue, and you could literally feel it in nearly every room because the gap is just so huge. Who knows who lived here before? So I looked up some options online to block out the wind, and I'm going to show you how I installed these. The most important thing is to measure how wide and how deep the gap is. I made use of some coins for that. And then you can look out for gap fillers of exactly the same height, which will be used in order to block out the wind. Now I also got a doormat, and what I like about this particular doormat is that you can use scissors to cut it to the dimensions you need. So you can order it in a predetermined size, and then you can just cut it down. I love the clean look that it gives the space. If you don't have a doormat right now, I definitely encourage you to look into that. It's easy to use and looks great. The other problem, if you remember the initial picture of what the door looked like before, was that it just looked terrible. I used this little mouse, it's called a mouse, to sand down the door. I took off the handles and sanded everything down nicely in order to put on a door sticker, and you will see that it makes a huge difference. Taking off the door handle might seem tedious, but at the end of the day, when you put on the sticker, it pays off to have taken off all the things you can take off. Finally, it's the time to put on the door sticker. So exciting. The great thing about this door sticker is that it is easy to take it off and put it back on again. You can try it out the first time. In case that the direction of the paper wasn't right, you can take it off and try your luck again. Although this paper is much longer and there's more potential to get things wrong, I found it much easier to work with than the Backsplash, mainly because you get second chances. That makes it much easier to work with. As you reach the lock, make sure to work around it. It helps to have an X-Acto knife. My advice is to be patient because you can always remove the sticker and try again. Also, use a wet towel to make sure that everything sticks nicely to the surface. Make sure to work your way from the top down. That makes things a lot easier, especially for the door. And use a wet towel segment by segment to get all the bubbles out of the sticker. It took me maybe 10 minutes to get the door done. Trust me, it's worth it. The result is really mind-blowing. Do you still remember the problem I had with the wind blowing through the gaps at the bottom? Well, this plastic thing is going to stop that from happening. Make sure you measure out the height and then stick on this piece of plastic, and the wind will never blow in again. That concludes the door transformation. And let me share a quick before and after of the gap underneath the door. The gap was quite huge, wasn't it? I did have little insects come through. It was not just the wind, so I'm very glad that this issue has been resolved finally. I'm so excited. This was the last step of the renovation, so let's just take a very quick recap of what it looked like before. It looks so scary looking back, doesn't it? And also so poor and messy, like a warehouse. And this is what it looked like right after the makeover. So this is the entrance door. You just saw the mirror. Now we have the backsplash with the frames on top of it. As we continue to the left, you see the green door that leads to the kitchen, another project in progress. And if you look to the left side, there's the second-hand mirror and the shelves that we installed right underneath it. Next to the bathroom door, there are the small shelves to put on the keys with some little baskets, and this is what it looks like. I'm completely in love with it, especially because I only spent 35 bucks on it. Had I spent a bit more money, there would have been much more for me to do, but I was on a budget. This is a rental apartment, so I'm completely happy with spending just 35 bucks, and the result that I got is absolutely what I was looking for. And this also concludes this video. I hope you liked it. If you haven't already, check out my other videos. As I already said, I've already posted the bathroom as well as the living room. If you like these sort of videos and would like to see how I continue transforming my rental apartment, consider following me. And if you have any comments about what you've seen in this video today, don't forget to comment right below. If you have already done a hallway makeover yourself, let me know in the comment section below. This was it for today. I'm looking forward to seeing you in my next video. See you. Bye.